Story 1. I found a forum for dead people. It's a tale as old as the internet itself. You're killing your boredom by browsing the internet, mindlessly scrolling through pictures and reading through forums. One click leads to another, and before you know it, you've tripped and fallen down the rabbit hole to the weirder parts of the internet. And I'm not all that tech savvy, but I suppose I am intelligent enough to understand the concept of unlisted websites. Things you can't find through a Google search, but that exist if you have a link provided. I guess that's the essence of the deep web. I tend to browse in incognito. I'm not gonna go into details, but I think we all know for what purpose. Last night or this morning, depending on how you classify 3 a.m. and insomnia, I was reading a forum about people's weirdest experiences on the web. I am a skeptical fellow, so when a few diligent commenters provide a link, I will gladly follow to verify their stories. At some point, one happened up on a website that was simply an endless string of numbers ending in .org, leading to a plainly designed ed forum. How was your day? Was the main title of said forum. It was welcome change from the depressing and even horrific stories others had shared thus far in the night. So I decided to check out how people were doing around the world. Maybe focusing on others' lives would take away focus from my own depressing existence. I clicked on the top entry one listed. When I first retired, I was dumbfounded by the amount of dead time I would have to tirelessly get through the day. Perhaps for the first time in 10 years, I appreciated the lazy morning. My wife made my favorite breakfast, and I was even happy to take a midday nap afterwards. I guess my body was just tired, because I never woke up from that. How do I let my wife know I didn't pass in pain, and that I loaf? Her very much mildly confused by his last statement. I checked out the comments below. We all die sometime, welcome. And another one said, if you treated her right, she would know you love her already. Some sort of role-playing forum was the first thought that came to me. The comments were a perfect collection of welcoming and spiteful comments. I clicked to the next post. Honestly, I've always expected more from life. My day was shitty enough to begin with. Arguing with teenage children is a pointless endeavor. It makes me long for the time where they were just happy to have pancakes for breakfast. Anger is just as pointless, as I've come to discover far too late in life. The distraction was the only thing needed to somehow make me. SS a red light and, well, I'm not exactly sure what happened next, but here I am, my final day on this shit planet. He signed his entry with his apparently real name and birth date. It was a fairly uncommon name at that. I opened another tab to check his info in reference to any car accidents. All I found was some old news entry from 2004, but it perfectly matched his story to a T. What kind of sick person pretends to take the identity of someone who died such a horrific death? Both infuriated and intrigued, I kept on reading. I can only blame my own sense of morbid curiosity. I am not entirely sure how long I spent reading through countless posts from people pretending to have died in various ways at different points in history. Everyone had signed with real names, and not a commenter called them out for their deluded games. The straw that broke the camel's back was when I noticed a post by a familiar name. My own mother. She had been dead for over a decade, so I felt fairly certain it was some sort of sick prank or bizarre role play. Maybe the users were looking up obituaries and taking their identities for their own pleasure. I was even more disturbed when T.H.A. perfectly described the surroundings of her death despite never having told anyone. I've been feeling extremely tired as of late. It was no surprise when I awoke this morning and felt like I hadn't slept in days. I wanted to just stay in bed, but family duties called. My husband had already left for work and I had taken the week off in hopes of recovering. But someone has to feed the kids. Breakfast was all right. I fed them their favorite pancakes, easy to prepare, and I had nothing better to do. I remember getting into the shower, but it was getting real hard to catch my breath, and under the steam from the hot water I simply passed out. I don't really know what happened after that. Oh, God, I hope my children didn't see me lying naked on the floor, or I decided right then I would be the righteous one to make them stop stealing people's identities. At least use a fake name if it was nothing more than a pathetic joke. I scanned the page for Register B button only to find I was already logged in under my real name. As a matter of fact, with some trepidation I clicked to expand my profile. On it someone had written my name, email address, birth date, and death date. Today, yet again, my eyes wandered to the title of the website. How was your day? I thought back and reflected on what had happened so far. My life, Washington, sent the most interesting, so I hadn't really taken the time to think about it. There was nothing particularly interesting about my day. Exam period was coming up, so I had to wake up earlier than my young brain was used to. I drank coffee, browsed the internet. Instead of studying, the procrastination lasted longer than I'm proud to admit. Though I eventually felt guilty enough to pick up a textbook and studied until the evening, a mild headache set in. It was enough to stop me from studying and do something more relaxing instead. Actually, it might have been more than mild, more like a stabbing pain rapidly increasing in intensity. I got up from my chair and fell to the floor. That's all I remember before blacking out. It's a peculiar feeling when your heart stops, but apparently that's what it takes for you to be able to access the forum for dead people. They brought me back, though. I have a vague memory of paramedics bringing me to the hospital, needles being vet into my veins. I guess my dad must have come upstairs to check on me. Lucky me. I don't really remember much from the hospital, nor returning home. As a matter of fact, I just now find myself browsing this forum, not really remembering how I stumbled across it. How was your day? Story 2. Array 1, Channel 4. Array 1, Channel 4. Ursa Minor once had 6 stars, so did Cygnus. I know most of you don't believe me. In fact, it's possible that none of you do, but I swear on the graves of my family that it's true. Every word. They've been here ever since the early 80s. They hide in our skies, disguising themselves as stars. They're the ones who made my father become sick with dementia until he died, taking my mother and little sister with him when he rowed the family canoe out onto the lake and flooded it until it sank, killing them all. He believed me, you see. He'd been one of the few who could remember the night skies without them, when the constellations had the right number of stars. I remember the day they arrived. I had been on my way to a game of miniature golf with my little sister Hannah when I decided to use the payphone near the grocery store that we had to pass to phone home. I forget why I was calling, but I remember that I didn't have any money. I dialed the number from my parents' house without the usual collect call pre-dial. NG, usually you could do that and an operator would come on the line and ask you to deposit some money or if you wanted to make a collect call. This time there was a different voice on the line, what they sometimes call a chip voice. It simply recited array 1, channel 4, array 1, channel 4, array 1, channel 4, array 1, and then paused before repeating itself. I didn't know what to make of it. I let Tana listen, and she agreed that it was weird, but she is, as she used to put it, more normal than I am, so it meant nothing to her. She suggested that they were probably just testing the phones to make sure they were working right. That didn't seem right to me, though the code sounded almost military. My sister and I played our round of golf. We played Screaming Me's, you know, that one with the animatronic statues of the old-time actors. There's a statue of Esther Williams as a mermaid on the fourth hole, which knocks your ball aside with her tail, if you know, CK it in her direction. Anyhow, I didn't play all that well. That time I couldn't get that readout out of my head. Array 1, channel 4. Or maybe it was array 1, channel 4. And in my case, I wanted to know more. When we got home, Mom made us wash up for dinner. Dad talked about work, about the new guy who just arrived with bright ideas that the boss agreed would secure the company's place in the business. They're energy consultants. I don't really know what that means, but it made my dad good money, so it was at least a profitable job. After dinner, we sat in front of the TV. My sister and I wanted to watch MTV. It was good back then. They played nothing but music videos. But my parents absolutely refused to watch that nonsense. My father unprogrammed the station from the remote. He thought that meant it was no longer available. Of course, I knew that if you tapped the numbers for the exact channel, you could still watch it, even if it skipped past it when you were channel surfing. We watched a rerun of an old show called Perry Mason. The commercial came on. You remember that one with the weird talking head guy advertising for a version of Coke that nobody wanted and acting like he thought it was delicious, even though he was supposedly computer-generated and couldn't even drink it, while he was stuttering his way through his misinformed PR. I say of a soda he couldn't even drink. I asked my father about the message I'd heard earlier on the phone. He agreed it sounded military, but he said it wasn't an Army call. He served in the Army as a communications officer for 5 years before he switched careers to be a medic, and it wasn't something he recognized. He went into his workshop and locked the door the way he used to do when my sister and I were really little, and he wanted to be sure we didn't come in and hurt ourselves. He was in there for a little over an hour. He composed himself quickly when he came out, but I knew he'd learned something while he was in there that disturbed him. I went in after he'd gone back to the TV room. There was an old radio there, one of those CBS that Truck, Ursa, and CBRS used to talk to each other within those old days. Before cell phones and the internet, it was unusable. In fact, parts of it looked like something in a painting by Dali, that one with the clocks. I went outside to think. stopped looking up at the old, familiar constellations. They were all wrong. I counted 7 stars in Cygnus. That didn't seem right. I knew there had always been 6. I went to get my book on astronomy, the one my grandmother had given to me when I turned 9 the year before she died. It had been her book when she was little, and she wanted to share the stars with me. I read it every day, always counting the stars in each constellation. I knew their names, and even some of the stories of the gods and heroes they were named after. I had just read it a few days before, and I know I'd read that Cygnus had 6 stars, but when I read the book, it now read that Cygnus was a constellation that held 7 stars. Not all of the constellations had more stars, but there were at least 3 in each hemisphere with more than they once had. That was 30 years ago. A lot has happened since then. Some might think that aliens trying to change our world might be responsible for all the wars in the Middle East or the eventual downfall of the shuttle program, but they've been more subtle than that. You know, those people who put things like Honey Boo Boo on the Learning Channel, or who gradually weed out passages in old history books that they consider to be of interest to modern students. Those people who inundated MTV with those mindless entertainment programs that we watched until we forgot what intelligent TV was. You know, those reporters who ignore the subtle signs of invasion to broadcast whether or not some panda got late THIS week. Those people are the target. They're the reason so many people don't know the difference anymore. I stopped watching TV in 1987. After my favorite show was pulled as, oh, my mind wasn't messed up like so many others. I doubt you believe this story, but I know it's true. Ursa Minor once had 6 stars. Story 3. Wake up. Everything started out normal. It was just a simple nightmare, right? But the more I thought about it, the more unlikely that sounded. No nightmare could be that detailed, that gruesome. At first I thought I was alone in that dream, but I couldn't have been more wrong. There was something there in the far corner of the room. It sat there, watching, waiting, taunting me, almost drawing me towards it. It looked like a statue, made of dark stone, with glittering eyes made of rubies. Its hands were crossed over its heart, as if holding a small object close. Silently, I walked towards the object, somehow knowing I would regret the decision. It was only a few feet away now. Something was off about the statue. It had a deathly cold air around it, almost like an invisible wall that you had to push through to get past. Once I was only a foot away, I immediately knew what was off about it. This wasn't a statue. No, far from it. To be exact, it was some sort of phantom, reaper, whatever way you want to describe it. It just stood there and wavering and blinking. I desperately wanted to move away, to turn and run as far away as possible, though something rooted me to that exact spot. Was it fear? Fascination? Maybe a little bit of both. Whatever it was, I despised the feeling for keeping me in such a dangerous spot. It all happened so fast. First, I was standing there, watching the creature, and it lunged at me, wrapping its robed arms around me, the cold air chilling me to the bone. I blinked, a new scene unraveling in front of me. I couldn't exactly describe where I was, because there was nothing around me except snow. The white fluff was blowing in the wind, like ice-cold razors cutting through my flesh. All sense of direction was lost, replaced by desperation. Oh, get out of the freezing temperatures. Sprinting off in what I thought was north, I stumbled a few times, quickly getting up in fear that something was chasing me. I must have been running for hours, though I couldn't tell. Off in the distance, I thought I saw what looked like a cave. It was still a good 100 yards away, was surprisingly clear through the bee lizard. Seeing it as my only option, I ran towards the entrance, finally stumbling into the blackness. Upon reaching the bottom, I found myself in a jungle, heat beating down on me, the sweat refusing to evaporate into the already humid air. Getting up, I brushed the dirt off my pants, carefully slinking through the trees and undergrowth, not wanting to attract any unwanted guests. There was a sound in the distance, almost sounding like an elderly man's voice. Ignoring it at first, I continued to walk, the man's voice getting louder with each step until I reached a small clearing. In the center, an old man sat, his knees pulled to his chest. The man's back was towards me, but as I walked around him, I was surprised, no, terrified when I saw what he looked like. Pale, eyeless eyes sunken into his skull, thin lips muttering something I couldn't hear, skin wrinkled and burnt from sitting in the blistering hot sun. The man looked up at me, recognition flashing in his gaze. "I saw you in my dream. Can you save us?" he asked, still rocking back and forth. The words shocked me, and as I backed away, he repeated himself. Over and over he spoke the words, each time his eyes growing wider and wider, his voice raising to a shout. Turning, I sprinted off in the direction away from the clearing, though the words still followed me the whole way. Another few hours passed, and I was in a field. The change of scenery confused me, and I knew that it had to have something to do with the reaper that attacked me. Off on the horizon, there was a mountain, its peak reaching high above the clouds. Walking towards it, I tripped over something, falling onto my face. Turning, I saw what looked to be a young girl, about 13 years old, laying in the grass, her hands folded over her chest. "Don't believe what they say. You're dreaming. You have to wake up," she said, returning to her pensive state. Backing away, I continued my trek towards the mountain, and though I didn't seem to be getting any closer, frustrated, I kicked a stone, falling back onto the ground. There was a cold wind, red eyes flashing above me before the world went black, asterisk, asterisk. A dripping sounded in the distance. Soft whispers followed by a beep, beep, beep. I didn't open my eyes in fear of seeing the reaper, continuing to listen to what was going on. There was a louder voice off in the distance, and I sat up, my eyes opening to take in a white hospital room, flowers, and a card sitting on the table next to me. There were doctors out in the hallway, whispering softly. One must have seen me, because they all rushed into the room, huddling around my bed. "What did you see? Did you dream? Was it there?" they asked, all the questions making my head start to a CHE. Someone from the back of the crowd hushed everyone, pushing his way to the front. He was tall, and though he only looked to be about 22, he had dark circles under his eyes from lack of sleep. "Let the poor girl wake up a little first," he sighed, setting a clipboard down on the edge of my bed. "Here, I'll explain," he said. "Police found you in the woods out a mile away from your house. There were several puncture wounds all over your body, and you were shivering as if you were in the snow without a coat. A few of us checked you out, though we were unable to identify the cause of said wounds. You've been in a coma for over 2 years, the doctor explained, his eyes dark in sadness. During the coma, we have written down several things you have said in your sleep, most of them inexplicable, he said, looking down at the clipboard. You're stable now, so you're free to go home any time you wish, the doctor said, grabbing his clipboard and heading out of the room. A nurse handed me my clothes, the rest of them leaving the room to let me get changed. After doing so, I walked to the lobby to check out. Asterisk, asterisk, that same night I crawled into my bed, pulling the blankets up to my chin and looking out the window. The branches rattled against the window in the wind, making me jump every time they brushed against the glass. I couldn't seem to shake the memory of the Reaper, especially the red eyes. Something about them seemed so foreign, yet so familiar. Shaking my head, I turned over so my back was facing the window, deciding to think about it in the morning. Closing my eyes, I heard a soft whisper, "Sleep tight, I'll be waiting." Story 4. Hide. I suck in the air through my dry lips. I have to keep quiet. It's here, and if it finds me, I'm as good as dead. I wish I knew what it actually is, because my mind's eye is probably much worse than reality. Or at least, that's what I pray to be in the case, but in a way I'm glad I don't. All I need to know is that it is bad and angry at me for something. But what, again, what I don't know can't hurt me. That is until I am full, and my eyes search frantically for somewhere to go from here away, but I'm unsuccessful. The only thing I can find is darkness, the cold, lonely blackness that is to become my tomb. I can't stay here much longer because I can hear the steps or dragging of its feet lurking in the neighboring dimness. I feel myself break into icy sweat that swamps my hair and it sticks my clothes to me. This makes me feel even more restricted and claustrophobic, and I can't deal with this much longer. I am going to be sick or worse, cry out. I have to keep strong. My sister wasn't strong, and she got taken by the loony police. She just wouldn't stop crying and lashing out at people, or maybe couldn't. I don't really know, because I never visit her anymore because I don't like talking to her. I fling my arms quicker still to the seemingly closing in walls because the sound is getting ever closer. I touch just grimy walls and webs. I start losing patience. Then in my hysteria I trip over my own feet with a sickening thud. I just lie there, and there is silence, a long, unwanted, nauseating silence. Then I can hear it coming faster now, and I don't know why, but I can almost taste the victory this malevolent monster must be tasting now that it knows I am here. I scramble on the floor for what seems like forever, until I hit my one-way ticket out of here, a trap door. I spring my own personal haven's door open and throw myself inside, my eyes sting because the artificial light is all too new to me, but I welcome it like a long-lost friend. I feel so elated that I then allow myself a quick whoop and smile to myself. I haven't smiled for how long? It feels so unnatural that I have to stop it because I don't like the alien feel to it. Sobering up from my initial high, I take in my surroundings, a chair, a desk with 3 scraps of paper from a journal, 2 professional-looking documents, and a photograph, a tape recorder, and a large, somewhat menacing door. The sense of recognition jolts me immediately, but I'm not sure how. If I had known about here, I'd have never left. It should soothe me, the brightness and open space, but it makes me feel queasy. There are no monsters here, but why do I get the feeling I'm not alone, that there's something more dangerous here than what the eye may see? The initial joviality leaves me altogether, or now I stand in the center of the room without looking at anything in particular, but at the same time taking in everything. After about an hour of surveying everything, I dare myself to the chair to it down because my legs feel like they'll leave me at any given second. I pull myself to the table and start reading the crumpled pages, which appear to be from a journal. The writing looks to have been written by a 5-year-old and basically impossible to read, with the only obvious way of identification being the childish drawings. My sister's drawings, this time I really do, sir. Ah, this is sick. What is this? Who would do this? I'm shaking as I analyze the illustrations, the jutting lines meant to form people, the squiggles for hair, the unnatural curves for mouths, and the little insignificant blob in the center with a gaping hole where the smile should be. This was one of the many pictures my estranged sister would draw. They always scared me, and even now they leave me cold. So I throw it away, uncaring where it landed. I pick up the documents now, which seem to be medical documents. At first I'm confused, because I don't see the relevancy this until I see something that I need to read a few times to understand fully. The space where my sister's name should be hasn't got her name in it. Something is clearly wrong here because it makes no sense whatsoever. It is a lie, it is wrong. That name does not belong in that cold-hearted space. That name should be a secret to this page, insignificant even, because that name does not belong to an insane, violent girl. That name is mine. There's a very loud thump scratch at the trap door that makes me flinch. I forgot about it, but I don't care to hide now. I finally listen to the recording with bated breath. A man begins to speak in a very clipped, professional way. He says, "Patient number 45, after the tests, shows signs of severe schizophrenia and multiple personality disorder. She seems to like to keep her more negative personality aspects into the body of her sister and keep the positive to herself. She is showing no signs of improvement, and her age hallucinations seem to be getting more vivid. If anything, as if to confirm what this man is saying, I look to the photograph laying at the side of the desk. There are only 3 people in the photograph: my mother, my father, and then me in the middle, grinning. I am unsure on whether she can be cured. It's not that we, the staff, are incapable. It's that she can't help herself. She refuses to come to terms with the illness and is becoming less and less responsive to our screenings. I turn it off. I can't listen anymore. This man, who knows not even my name, knows more about myself than I do. I feel dizzy now, an intruder in my own mind. I finally allow myself to cry. I let it all out, all my anger, my fear, my loneliness. All I have felt in however long I've been running, released in one long, animalistic cry. I am a living lie, a walking joke, for all this time. That is when I remember that it is at the trap door, still bellowing and scratching. I am no longer Scar. Head of it. It is not my enemy. It is my friend. It is a part of me. I have been hunting for it for all this time, not the other way around. So I open the trap door and I embrace. Insanity, Story 5. To whom it may concern, to whom it may concern. If you are receiving this letter, I must first urge you to not throw it away. This is not an advertisement. This is not a scam. We want no money from you at all. This letter was sent to you solely for your benefit. According to our statistics, if you are still reading at this point, the probability of your survival has already gone up 35%. This is not a threat. This letter is designed as warning and preparation for what you are now facing. Let me be the first to extend our sincerest sympathies. Our organization is a group of individuals who have endeavored to counter a threat that is not well known. While we have limited information on what the actual threat is, the important thing to remember is that you are in extreme danger. Through no fault of your own, you have attracted the attention of certain parties that intend to do you great harm. We can share information if you so choose. Responding to the instructions in the back of this letter will allow you to contact us. Electronic correspondence is absolutely discouraged. None of it will be safe. What follows is a list of rules and instructions that will increase your chances of survival dramatically. There is no guarantee that your safety is assured, but our research has shown that these rules will give you 80% increased chance of survival if followed correctly and diligently. If you are already experiencing occurrences of unexplained phenomena, it is imperative that you implement these practices immediately for your safety, and we urge that you contact us immediately for further support. Do not concern yourself with why you should do these things. The reasoning will become readily apparent as time goes on. If you are still reading at this point, your survival chances have gone up an additional 5%. 1. Never allow complete darkness. Have flashlights, phone lights, or even emergency flares always on your person. Never sleep in a completely dark room. Always have night lights and candles that will last all night. We also suggest that you have multiple battery backup systems with the batteries charged. Regularly avoid traveling without an ample supply of backup lighting. 2. Eliminate all dark dead spaces in your home. If you cannot have them filled in, secure them with T-locks. Avoid using flimsy construction or securing methods. We have many cases of hinges simply ripped out of walls or cheap doors simply being torn apart. All cabinets, crawl spaces, attics, basements, and closets must be absolutely secured. Do not open them at night for any reason. Keep all essential medications and foodstuffs out of these areas and in the well-lighted parts of the home. 3. Do not peer into dark areas for any amount of time. If it is dark outside your window, close the curtains. If there is any area covered in shadow, do not look there for an extended amount of time. It is not important at this time to know why. This is necessary. Further information regarding this topic can be obtained with further contact with our organization. 4. Lock every window, door, and the entrance to your home before sundown every night. They must be secured in a similar fashion to the dark, dead spaces in your home. Door must be metal or solid wood. Windows used to be barred and secured. If possible, live in a home that is stone or brick or at least has solid siding. A thin layer of drywall or tin is not going to protect you. If you do not possess the economic means to secure your home, please contact us using the instructions at the end of this letter. 5. Avoid all mirrors at night. Remove them from hallways and bathrooms. They must be securely covered at NIGHT. 6. You won't be able to believe what you hear, and no, you're not going insane. In most cases, targeted individuals have reported hearing scraping, rustling, and gurgling noises from outside their home and from the dark, dead spaces. In some cases, familiar voices of dead relatives have called out to the targeted individuals from these areas. When anyone knocks on your door or at night, refuse them admission. Targeted individuals have reported voices that sound like their neighbors calling for help when the neighbors were on vacation, or phantom knocks at the door. 7. If who feel that you are being watched or that you are not alone, trust your intuition. Retreat immediately to a lighted area. 8. Discard of all bed frames. Do not have empty space under any furniture. Saw the legs off the furniture and discard bed frames. Any dark space must be eliminated. 9. Avoid sharing information of your situation on social media. It has been shown that close friends and family exposed to this phenomenon can cause it to spread and might even cause a multiplicative effect. For their sake, do not publicly advertise your situation. In the best case, you will be considered mentally ill, risking an involuntary committal to a psychological facility is the worst-case scenario. In that environment, you will be unable to control your environment and will inevitably face the worst. 10. Avoid consuming electronic media. Several accounts have shown that this phenomenon can infiltrate electronic media and distort it to a horrible effect. The manifestations of these effects vary from account to account, but all of them share a common theme. The distortions created great amounts of fear and anxiety in the persons exposed to them. 11. Do not try to theorize or investigate what is happening to you. You will have ample time to share your knowledge with the members of our organization. We suggest on the strongest terms that you do not attempt to investigate these events on your own. The danger that you are in is considerable. You will be contacted by a member of our organization in person, and one day at 10 a.m., we will only ever attempt to contact you during daylight hours. The representative of our organization will be wearing a pendant with a geometric design that will recognize immediately. We cannot explain why this will happen at this time. If you are visited at night or by someone lacking this pendant, you are in extreme danger. This is not a joke or a prank. We exist to help people like you in THI's situation. We do not require money, and we are not a cult. We only ask that you listen and follow our instructions until we can assess the amount of danger that you are in. You will also gain the opportunity to meet people who have shared your experience. Reports show a marked improvement in mental health and happiness when you are exposed to others sharing your experiences. You are free to disregard his message. However, our research has shown that doing so drops your survival chances to almost nothing if you followed none of our items listed above. If sundown is approaching, we urge you to immediately prepare using the above suggestions. There have been reports of distorted daytime hours, with certain reports of people losing daylight hours. You have no time to waste. It will be getting dark soon. Story 6. come play with me. Stepping through the doorway, I had to hold up a hand to cover my eyes. The sun was incredibly bright, and there wasn't a single cloud in the sky. This had given me the sad delusion that there would be some semblance of warmth to be had, but the bitter cold air shattered that happy thought. I wrapped my coat tighter around me, doing the top button up, which I always hated to do. It brought on feelings of claustrophobia, probably linked to the fact that it constricted my neck ever so slightly. My shoes hit the tarmac, and I began to walk out into the playground, a line of excitable children following me out before dispersing among the play equipment. Some sat in small groups on the circular benches, loudly talking about political or within the class. A smile crept over my face. Who knew 11-year-olds could discuss things in a way to make them sound like teenagers? Other classes were emerging now, and a few more chairs to help keep watch. Jenny caught my hand, smiled, and I gave a small nod in reply. Soon the playground was swarmed with children, running around, playing games, excitedly discussing televisi on shows and which video games they were playing. Plenty felt the need to come and share this information with me, and I went along with this, laughing and smiling. Although they could be the cause of a few accidents, the playground in a primary school often felt like one of the happiest places to be. I was content, but obviously alert to any potential dangers. It was then that I noticed her. There was a small girl, younger than the age I taught, maybe 6 or 7 years old from her build, but she was slumped in a corner next to a fence, hugging her knees to her chest. She wasn't wearing a coat, nor was she wearing the school jumper with our logo emblazoned on the front of the chest. She was sat on concrete, huddled in shadow, her dark hair cascading over her face as she looked down. She must have been freezing. I assumed she'd had some sort of argument with a friend and was away from the others, either sulking or genuinely upset. Either way, I had to console her and to send her back inside to get her coat. I walked over and squatted down next to her, getting to the same level as her to make sure she didn't feel at all threatened. "Hey there, are you okay?" She shook her head, shaking some hair loose from her shoulder so that it covered even more of her face. What happened? Silence. It was at this point that I began feeling uncomfortable. I had no idea why. I'd had conversations just like these a dozen other times. Some children felt like talking, some needed consoling, some just needed space, and we gave them that. They usually spoke when they were ready. This situation, though, something about it had me on edge to the point I could actually feel the adrenaline kick of a flight or fight response. "Aren't you cold?" Another shaking of the head. Then a meek voice came forth from the mass of hair. "I never get cold." Some of us never grew out of that bravado, but children almost always responded like they were never too cold or tired or anything else that could be perceived as weakness, at least not when asked. "Well, I think we need to get you inside to get your coat, or at least your jumper." No, the voice was no longer meek. It was commanding, and the head shifted slightly so that it was raised more towards me, revealing her face to me. I tried my best not to, but I recoiled slightly in this light, the shadow of the fence. Her eyes appeared entirely black, no iris, no sclera, just pure black ovals reflecting my own face. She sighed gently, and her eyes closed again. I want to play well, I began, slowing my breathing and keeping the momentary fear out of my voice. You can play after we get your jumper. Will you play with me? Sure. She tilted her head back now, the hair falling away as her eyes snapped open suddenly. Again, those eyes, the true black pools reflecting my own concerned face. We have to play. You have to play with me. I had stood up and taken a few steps back. She was shaking now, but it didn't seem to be shivering. There was no fear and nothing about her that suggested she was cold. It literally looked like she was shaking in anger. Her blank, expressionless face had contorted into one of anger, her eyes narrowing and her lips pulling back until her teeth were bared. I had stumbled back a few more steps, and then had frozen. I felt simultaneously terrified and embarrassed. I was a senior teacher in a playground full of children and other staff, and was retreating in horror from one infant. I opened my mouth to speak, and then the bell went, the ringing which symbolized the end of playtime. The anger vanished from her face, and her eyes closed again as children rushed around me, between us, none of them stopping to look at her as she rose from the ground. I found my feet and walked towards where my own class were lining up, my eyes locked on her as she stood upright, and once more I was shown the darkness behind her eyelids as they opened. Her lips pulled up into a smile that chilled me more than anything I had encountered in my teaching career. And then, lost in the throng of Rooney NG children, I lost sight of her. Once she was out of my sight, it was easy to dismiss what I had seen as just a trick of the light, my own senses tricked, causing me to become afraid, which in turn caused my senses to let me down again. I never saw that girl again, never noticed her so I could confirm or disprove what I had seen, and I moved schools not long after that transferring somewhere closer to home. I had begun to put it out of my mind, dismiss it entirely. Then I stumbled upon a newspaper article, one which spoke of a black-eyed girl who had been frequently seen in Staffordshire. Looking into it, I found hundreds of accounts of those who had witnessed the black-eyed children, all describing the same sense of fear, dread, and foreboding which accompanied them, and the anger the children displayed when it was discovered they were anything but normal. Apparently, most of these involved these black-eyed children asking to come into your home, saying they need help, or coming up to your car, begging for a ride. I have no idea what happens if you allow them in, and the teacher in me would find it difficult to turn them away. All I would say is look them in the eye before saying yes. Story 7. That Night in the Mirror. I'll tell you right now that my story doesn't have any dramatic climax or any cathartic resolution. Don't bother reading it if that's what you're looking for. My story is of one very specific moment in my life, one which, try as I might, I cannot negate as a trick my exhausted brain played on me, or a momentary lapse of reason and subsequent plunge into childish fears. I think a fear of mirrors must be fairly common in this day and age. I remember when I was young I saw one of those compile Haitian TV horror shows, the ones where there'd be a different short scary story between commercial breaks. In retrospect, it wasn't the scariest thing in the world, and if I saw it again today, I would probably invite friends over, and we could quash our collective fear by mocking the bad acting or ridiculous storyline. All I remember of it is that in the story a man was being constantly tormented by a disfigured, murderous psychopath, but he only saw him when he looked in the mirror. The whole story was a typical song and dance of the man catching his stalker in the mirror ban, him turning to face him and finding nothing there. Maybe the reason I remember it so well is because it was so shortly after I heard my mom die. I say heard because I never saw her body. I Washington S watching TV a different show when I heard what sounded like porcelain breaking, followed by a loud thud coming from the kitchen to rooms away. The sudden noise was oddly unsurprising, but I remember craning my head to see my mom's legs sprawled on the tiled floor. I couldn't see any more of her. The doorframe was in the way. Luckily, I suppose, my father ran in first, Callie, N.G. her name somewhat frantically, as I stood up, but did not advance out of what I imagine was fear. I remember him telling me to stay where I was. The doctors told us a virus had gotten into her here. I remember my father protesting that he hadn't even heard of that before. Neither had I, but the concept of death itself was fairly new to me, and I remember being filled with an overwhelming sense of existential fear, as if I or anyone I knew could suddenly crumble into a pile of lifeless dust at any moment. I don't think I was a very fearful child, though, not more so than most, and even my uneasiness around mirrors didn't exactly trump my other fears of spiders or being in cramped spaces. I guess it makes sense that mirrors are a source of fear for people. One of the defining signs of self-awareness is whether or not an animal recognizes itself in the mirror. Maybe we still retain some primal belief that what we're seeing really isn't us, but some sinister shadow self, not to mention all the scenes in horror movies that use them. A character bends down to splash water in their face, and when they lift their head back up, their face is distorted in some gruesome W. I had just gotten home from a party at a nearby frat house. I lived in an old Victorian house that for my friends from school and I rented. I was the only one home, having left the party early, if you can call 2 o'clock in the morning early, and my roommates were all still out. I ran upstairs to my room, exhausted and wanting nothing more than to lay in my bed and feel the rest of the world leave me behind. But I didn't. In rare form, I decided to take a few more steps down the hall to the old, poorly designed bathroom 2 of my roommates shared with me. It was lit by a single fluorescent ENT bulb, casting the black and white tile in a sickly, near-green color. I ran a thin strip of toothpaste on my brush and gave my teeth a once-over before spitting the slightly brown spit and foam down the sink. When I looked up, I saw her standing behind me in the bathtub with the curtain drawn wide open. My mother's mouth hung down as if screaming, but without any sound. I could tell it was my mother, but she was a grotesque shadow of how I remember her. Her eyes were either completely gone or simply black in color. The sockets were vacuums within which nothing reflected. Her skin was so pale it was almost blue, and her dark hair looked drenched in water, hugging her scalp tight and falling in front of her shoulders in thin strips. Her mouth wasn't exactly screaming, so much as hanging open, impossibly open, much further than a person's jaw can extend. She seemed to be wearing a thin white nightgown, drenched, like her hair, and clinging to her emaciated body Her stick legs looked like they were going to buckle under her weight, while her arms reached back against the walls. I must have only seen her for seconds before turning, screaming, and falling backwards, slamming hard against the tiled floor. The tub was empty. There had been no sound, and now, as the echoes of my cry dissipated, I could only hear my heavy breathing. I don't know how long I lay on the floor of the bathroom, the fluorescent bulb dully buzzing as I became too frightened to even move. Eventually I heard the downstairs door swing open as a parade of drunk college boys and their floozies poured in for the night. They found me only the floor and thought it was hilarious that I was so drunk I had almost passed out in the bathroom. I never saw her again. I never want to see her again, and every day I wish I hadn't. There are myths of people being scared to death or being haunted by dreams of a single event for their whole lives. I've had dreams too, but they aren't what haunts me. To this very day, when someone you love dies, you tend to forget everything bad about them, and eventually your fond memories of them just coalesce into a fondness you share with everyone else that knew them. But that's not how I feel about my mother. I was too young to have endless loving stories about her. Instead, all I can remember is her face that night in the mirror. My story doesn't end with me taking my own life or anything dramatic like that. I have thought about it, though. I tried putting a length of rope across my neck any day and squeezing just to see what it would feel like, but I would never go through with it. It isn't so much that I want to live. What bothers me the most is that I don't know for sure what happens when we die. Nobody knows, but what I saw that night in the mirror makes me think I do. To Matt Chatham.